session, and we'll be posting it on CCDC's project page, so you can go back and refer to it, or if others miss this meeting, they can reference it as well. So good afternoon. I am Amy Fimble, CCDC's project manager for the Linen Blocks on Grove Street project. Thank you for taking the time out of your lunch hour today to hear more about the Linen Blocks on Grove Street project. It's really a project that's focused on street improvements on Grove Street itself between 10th and 16th Streets. As some background, CCDC kicked off this project back in fall of 2020. We recently completed a 10-month-long visioning process. During that time, we heard from business and property owners, residents. We had 2 public surveys that went out. And also coordinated a lot with partner agencies on what improvements they wanted to see for this section of Grove Street. Back in July, so a couple months ago, the project transitioned from visioning into the concept design phase. Our design team, which is led by GGLO, took the vision and has since completed their initial site analysis. And we have a draft concept design that we'll be sharing with you today. So some housekeeping items. Everyone has been joined in the muted function, but there are a couple ways in which we want you guys to participate and be heard as part of this open house. The first way is using the chat function, which is along the bottom of your screen. And that will allow you to type any comments you have in the chat box, and then I'll be moderating that throughout the presentation. The second way is using the raise hand button along the bottom. This will cue us that you want to speak, and then we can unmute you and you can provide your comments that way. I will now turn it over to Christine Harrington with GGLO, who will get us started here.
Great, thank you, Amy. I'm Christine Harrington. I'm landscape architect and project manager for this project. I've worked at GGLO for 9.5 years. I'm a senior associate and have been working a lot in the downtown Boise area. So really excited to show you this project and all the work that we've been doing. We've conquered a lot. And so we have quite a few slides to go through to get everybody caught up to where we are currently and give you as much information as we can so you can have enough information to go and make comments and give us your opinions. So I will go through that pretty quickly. I'll stop a couple of times and ask for comments, but let's go ahead and get this started. So we are looking at the linen blocks on Grove Street between 16th and 10th Street, and really envisioning this as a green spine that leads from the west down to downtown. And our vision is really to create an active, walkable space that gives a distinct identity to the site and also allows for public events, big things like what's happening this week with Tree Fort. So as you all know, Grove Street is positioned, and the Linen Blocks is positioned pretty centrally to a lot of different open space and green spaces. We're very fortunate for that. It's also a unique street. It's categorized as a local, slow-moving, low-volume street in between Front Street and Main Street, which are pretty large arterials that run throughout the neighborhood. So we're very fortunate to have a slower moving street. However, it is bisected by quite a few collector streets, all of the numbered streets shown there. And also, as you know, as described here, there are a lot of parking lots within these blocks. So everything in the hatched yellow is a parking lot, and everything that's in the solid red blocks are future developments that are actually taking over some existing parking lots. So we're really starting to see a transformation already of proposed development in this area. So you're going to start seeing a lot more people, a lot more pedestrians on the street. This is coming up a little slower, but as you all know, kind of the feel of the Linen Blocks in Grove Street is really vehicular. It's a very wide right of way, and it feels like it is dominated by the vehicular traffic. during the visioning, we heard what was working and what was really great down here. So we have a high degree of local support. The Linden Blocks has a character and it has a distinct identity. We have really distinct local businesses that create that identity. And also we have longtime businesses. So people come down to this area, they know exactly where they want to go, and they go to those retail establishments, and then they often just leave. Also, as we said before, low volume traffic, and it is a center for a lot of creative organizations and events such as Tree Fort and LED. Areas for improvement, areas for improvement, like we discussed, we have a lot of surface parking lots. So how can we reduce their impact on the sidewalk and the pedestrian realm? Streetscape design has been pretty lacking. It hasn't seen improvements for quite a while because of the lack of new development in the area. We have a pretty unappealing pedestrian environment where everything is focused more towards vehicles instead of pedestrian and bikes. And we don't have any long-term year-round anchoring tenant that attracts activity throughout the day. So it gets pretty quiet at night. And really it's used as a parking destination for a lot of people that work downtown and in the adjacent streets. So we have few housing options in the immediate area, which will be significantly changed with the new development. And we're deficient in the stormwater and broadband infrastructure. So a lot that we can improve. So through that visioning plan, we came up with 5 core design principles where we want to integrate historical uses through cultural storytelling to create a distinct place here that really represents the culture that's already beginning to thrive in the Linden districts. We want to reorient the street to have it be focused more on pedestrians and bikes, and for it to also accommodate personal vehicles through parking and ease of access. We want to activate the area through private and public gatherings and really have this be an 18-hour environment. So this is an active, safe neighborhood throughout the day and throughout the year. And then, of course, we would like to employ environmentally sustainable design elements, which we will go through and show you a little bit later. So the Linden District has quite a few historic themes that were brought forward during the visioning process. So the light industry, temporary housing, transportation corridor, and immigrants and the working class really all took root in this area. So we started to see what can we do to bring about the acknowledgement of these different historic themes. But we also know that there are some really strong current themes going on right now. So the Linden Blocks is a champion for emerging ideas and new styles and invention, which is shown throughout the Tree Fort Music Festival and the Road to the X Games through Rhodes Park. There's a lot of independent art that's displayed here through the public art process and presentations. We have eclectic retail, and then really this repurposing of old buildings and materials really give this space a distinct identity. So we looked at what makes a really vibrant and active streetscape. We did case studies of your streets that are very successful as festival streets and active streets. And we also did quite a few case studies of other places in Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland. And so what we found is that there are distinct categories of what makes a really good active green street. And so we are taking all of these elements, and the next time we come to you with the final design, we hope to have all of those all those elements with the green bubble adjacent here. So we're keeping all of those design elements in mind. So some of those design elements and design moves that we're looking at are, the Linden District has a very unique, established set of large billboards. So how can we start to leverage that and make those iconic like other places have done in Portland, Chicago, and in Denver? How can we build upon the existing neighborhood public art collection and create a linear open art air gallery and really create a destination within these areas? So as you guys, a lot of you have already recognized or seen, is that there are these art frames that accommodate circulating and temporary public art in the 2D fashion, which is actually really unique for public art. There's also, we are proposing doing these art courts, which are podiums that would allow public art to be brought in, either sculpture, kiosks, signs, and to be swapped out throughout the year. And then we have the opportunity to host a historic Boise neon sign collection. And we think that the Linden Blocks is a really prime place to present this. So looking at how can we create an open air neon sign museum to really highlight all of these beautiful neon signs that have been collected throughout the years from Boise. We also want to activate the public realm through outdoor dining, through spill out retail and dining, and food trucks, as well as shared spaces such as these parklets shown in the bottom image, to expand that outdoor dining into the parking stalls. Given all of that, we've taken cues from the Linden building of how can we create a really calm and simple background to all this exciting work, the art, the activities. How can we make our palette a very neutral palette to highlight all this, almost like you would see in an art gallery itself. So we're looking at a very simple monochromatic specialty concrete pavement with specialty scoring and integral color, and then highlighted with an asphalt bike lane that we'll show you coming up in the design. So we're also looking at creating a special collection of site furnishings that would give the Linden District and the Linden Blocks their own character, distinct from what's going on in the rest of downtown. So looking at specialty furnishings, benches, and then obviously with our bike lane going through this area, want to highlight bike amenities such as bike lean rails, racks, and fix-it stations along the way. So I want to stop there and see if any of you have any questions of the kind of these broader moves, the site analysis, before we get into the actual design. So if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat.
I see that Erica from the Modern Hotel says she loves the neon sign idea.
Great, we do
Feel
too.
free to use the chat, guys, and pop in any comments or questions.
Yeah, we'll give you a few minutes. This is what you're seeing on the screen right now is a rendering of right in front of the Linden Blocks and some of the proposed elements that we're starting to compile moving forward. And so next step, we'll look at some plans of this area, but I wanted to give you a taste of that before we jump into the plans.
There's also a shout out for the integrated concrete benches.
Very good, thank you.
So we got a question from Jeff Dalton, who's a property owner in front of like the liquor store to Outdoor Exchange block. And he's wondering, looking at the seating, which would be directly in front of our building, how does it fit?
Yeah, so we're looking at a few different options for parklets and curb alignment. And so this, again, we're very early on. And so these parklets would be scattered throughout the block, and they're designed to be, you can fit them in whatever width, but they range from the narrow 8-foot parklets that would fit into a parallel parking stall to some wider parklets that we're looking at. Can it extend through the, especially on events, extend into the amenity zone? So just kind of looking at different ways of incorporating temporary and permanent outdoor seating throughout the site. And I also see there was a question about permeable pavers for the parking stalls. And yes, that is one of the options that we'll go into. So maybe I'll just dive right in and start. Yes, you're right, Jeff. It's a little bit not to scale. The perspective's a little wonky on this. So you're right, this looks really deep, and we're looking at how to kind of fit that in different arrangements.
So this shot is between 14th and 15th looking east.
Correct. And so what you can see here, though, is, and we'll start to look at this, just give you a little preview. We are proposing staggering street trees on both sides of the bike lane and also adding some planters. And you can see the podium for either the neon signs or public art, and just kind of giving that that beginning look at what this could look like. So let me go ahead and go forward and start looking at the, see if I can move on. There we go. Sorry, it was a little stuck. There we go. So starting to look at the plan view, and I think this gives you a little bit of that 30,000 foot level. We brought you in really close, but now I'm going to bring you out a little bit and describe some general wayfinding and distinct elements that we're proposing here. So first, looking at the canopy cover, we know how important coverage is, especially during the hot summer months. And also trees we find are an excellent wayfinding signage component. So here what we're proposing are having two distinct types of trees marching down the block. One is a larger intersection tree, or trees at the intersections, which really then foreshortens the pedestrian's view of where the next crossing is. Right now you can look down the street and it seems like the intersection is miles and miles away because there's nothing that highlights each one of those nodes for you. So here we're proposing distinct trees at those intersections, and then, like I said before, staggering the other trees along the bike lane to give maximum coverage over the parking spaces, the bike lane, the seating and amenity zones, and the sidewalk. So by staggering it, we really kind of double the tree canopy with really the same amount of trees that are on the site. So here again, you can see where those future developments are going to be. So we've been working closely with the developers. They're very early on in their designs, but so we can understand what their needs are and what our requests and wants are for Grove Street moving forward. So there will be a real synergy of the design of the streetscape to their ground floor uses. So zooming into the blocks between 16th and 15th, we start to see some of these major components. And let me actually get an annotate marker here. So the first thing we looked at is how do we slow down the traffic? Like I told you before, this is categorized as a low volume, slow moving street. However, it does not feel like that. So how can we slow down the traffic, create a real sense of safety and also interest? So when you're screaming down the street at 40 miles an hour, you're not going to be able to see everything that's going on with the retail establishment. So how do we slow that down? One of the features that we are doing are incorporating elevated intersections. So as cars come through the intersection, they have to ramp up to this tabletop intersection, which is at the same elevation as the sidewalk. So pedestrians and bikes get priority and their hierarchy here. So they stay at the same level as they cross those intersections. The tabletop intersection slows down the traffic and provides a real clear indication of where pedestrians and bikes are. The second aspect that we're looking at are curb bulbs within the intersections. And you can see that here and here, and also on this side. So curb bulbs are an excellent opportunity for us to protect the parking lane, shorten the distance that pedestrians and bikes have to cross the street, and also maximize the space for trees within the right-of-way. We also have created curb bulbs or curb extensions at these areas where cars have to ramp up to get across the sidewalk and bike lane to get into parking lots. So again, we've created priority for pedestrians and bicyclists. So they stay at the same level. They're not ramping up and down as they cross these driveways. And so if we look at a section of what that then looks at like here, and it gives you just a little bit better. They are working on it. There we go. It always hiccups for me. Okay, here we go. So you can start to see the arrangement of mobility uses throughout the site. So we have narrowed the lanes down from what is currently anywhere between 11 to 13 feet drive lanes. We've narrowed those down to 10 feet. We've taken that extra space and created a much larger sidewalk, planting, and site furnishing zones and protected bike lanes. As you can see here, it's very unique where we have brought the bike lanes inside of the parking and drive lanes, and it's protected by an elevated planting buffer. And it is separated by the furnishing zone and the planting zone from the sidewalk. So we have distinct modes of travel marching down the street here. Everybody has their safe zone, and it really gives a much more efficient and safe way of traveling down Grove Street. So if we go to the next block between 15th and 14th, we start to see what other elements that could be proposed within this area. And so since we have a great opportunity with LED in this corner spot here, we're looking at how can we utilize not only LED's frontage, but also other frontages to create the sense of a linear park as we go down Grove Street. So we have, as you can see, we've flanked either side of the bike lane with planting, but also can, in certain areas, can we extend that park-like feeling and create these parklets within the parking zone. And so that would really help out extending outdoor seating for Big City Coffee and other restaurants, extending performance space and audience space, and also just creating spaces where people can hang out in the neighborhood while they're snacking or waiting for friends to meet up in the evenings. So if we take a look at that section, maybe I always have to double click and then it will jump forward. Yeah, that's what happened. So if we start to see how those things start to lay out, I just zoomed into that original image that we showed. You can see here where we have the planting on either side, curb bulbs bulbing out with planting, and then within the furnishing zone, having spill out seating and public art. And as you mentioned before, within that parking lane, we are proposing permeable pavers or specialty pavers, not only for the sustainability option, but as you'll see in a few slides, it really gives a sense of more highly detailed right-of-way and pedestrian realm when these streets are shut down for events. So one thing that we're looking at is how do we buffer? We have a lot of parking and a lot of movement throughout the space. So how do we continue to buffer that zone? And as a lot of you know, currently out in front of the Linen Building, they have a wall with those art frames. So we're looking at doing either walls with expanded art frames that line and buffer between the sidewalk and the parking lots that are existing, and or creating planting buffers that really give a separation and clear delineation of where cars go and where pedestrians are. This also provides an opportunity for spill out retail out in front of buildings, especially in these really large setbacks, which is a huge opportunity to create a really great sense of place and destination in this area. So moving down to the block between 13th and 14th, again, you can see what happens when we have a lot of curb cuts within the area. We've tried to reduce a lot of the curb cuts and driveways up into parking lots where we could, really leveraging the side streets and the alley for entrances. But when that's not possible, we have kept some of the curb cuts, and we're still looking to reduce them more because you can really see how that breaks up and reduces the amount of parking within the streetscape. So we're looking to continue to expand that. So in the next block, where there is a large parking lot, like the Idaho Power parking lot between 12th and 13th, we really see this as an opportunity to leverage the planting that's on their side of the sidewalk with all the planting that's on our side of the sidewalk. And that's where we get this real sense of, you know, a festival street and linear park. And here you can see, you know, during Tree Fort or other weekend festivals or seasonal festivals, what we could do if we shut down some of these streets, and really it provides this boulevard of activity, a lot of tree coverage, areas for spill out dining, not only adjacent to the buildings, but within the streetscape itself. And then you can see where the permeable pavers or specialty pavement within the parking lane really gives you this heightened pedestrian realm too. So along with the concrete street in the middle, it really gives a sense of a higher level of detailing within this area.
Christine, we had a question about the parklets and whether they're planned to be a permanent feature or a temporary one. And I think the thought right now is that the parklets would be temporary and be able to be flexible to move around as appropriate and based on the needs and events that are going on.
Exactly right. Yeah, for some areas where, for example, if there's a lot of food trucks, which we're illustrating here at the Idaho Power parking lot, and they want some spill out parking, or I'm sorry, spill out seating for people in the neighborhood, they could sponsor some of these parklets, as well as anybody else that have businesses along the streetscape. We also can see how we're starting to bring in these art ports here with the illustration of just an example of a neon sign. I have not seen the collection of neon signs. That's going to be the next step. So we're really excited to get a look at all of those. But how do these start to kind of play along this area and really create a dynamic and interesting storytelling of the history of Boise, and also the history of kind of that automotive and almost Highway 66 roadside attraction feel that really will bring people to the Lynn Blocks as a destination. And then going down to 11th and 12th, again, looking at how can we utilize spill out from existing and new buildings. And so really working with developers to set their buildings back so we can have spill out retail and maximizing the sidewalk space that we have. We've been able to carve out at least an 8-foot minimum sidewalk throughout the whole area. Right now, as you guys have experienced, it goes down to 4 feet in some spaces and 6 feet in others. So we're really created a much more pedestrian-friendly right-of-way. We are also proposing the historic light poles that you can see in the West End right now. And so we think that works really well with the very simple palette of materials. So we're looking at concrete, black metal, black accents to make this feel just really sophisticated and simple. And then moving down to the very end of our site between 10th and 11th, again, showing what that could look like with the integrated benches, pet rails that surround the landscape, because we're really proposing a lot of landscape in this area. We don't want to have that destroyed by all the pets that will be moving into the area with all the new housing. So how do we create pet areas for pets, but also provide a buffering around the planting, and then also opportunity for rotating art throughout the site. So with all of that added green space and open space, we tried extremely hard to retain the maximum number of parallel parking. And we're still dialing this in. The more drive aisles that we can consolidate and or move around to the corner, to the side streets, or access through the alleys, we will continue to get more and more parking stalls. So right now we have maintained 88 parking stalls. We've been working with the city to talk about how can we ensure that there's always a rotating parking and people aren't just leaving their cars along Grove Street all day. So we're looking at increasing the timed parking, the 1 hour and 2 hour parking spots, and then also potentially increasing metered parking, especially out in front of businesses, so they get a lot of turnover, so guests and patrons can easily find parking right in front of their destination. So all of that, we're also looking at what are the opportunities to continue to expand the open space. Again, looking at how do we create identity of a linear park throughout the Linden District. So we have a lot of underused and underutilized parking lots, especially on the weekends. So can we transform some of these parking lots with the collaboration with the parking lot owners in the future for pop-up retail or creating pocket parks, especially in the center here of the Linden blocks. Again, looking at expanding that with parklets and then giving an overall park-like experience with expanded planting. With the expanded planting, that is a layer of our sustainable design elements. So we really view planting in the urban realm as a necessary element, not only for microclimate, as well as just the psychological benefits of planting within the urban environment. And so each one of the trees that we showed would be planted in silvacells. We're proposing installing large caliber trees at the at installation to maximize the carbon sequestration and also to mitigate some of the exhaust from cars. We also are proposing planting areas within the right-of-way with pet rails, as you can see here, that's incorporated in the Garden City of Chicago. And also expanding that planting so it's not just lawn or evergreen plants, but also has an element of native flowering plants that will create habitat for our native pollinators. So we want to attract birds and butterflies to this area for learning and also enjoyment for the pedestrians. and
I think we
bicyclists.
had a question earlier about permeable pavers in the parking stalls. I know there's in the renderings, we show that a little. Do you want to touch on what the thought process currently is now?
Sure, and I'm sorry, was there a little bit more detailed question?
So I guess, is that our intent that they be in the parking stalls? I know we're pretty early on and thinking that that may be one of the tools that we use to handle stormwater runoff. Because of those curb extensions of the driveways and the alleys, it's one of the tools that we could use to handle stormwater, I guess. But we're not for sure that that's what we're going to do yet.
Right. So this is kind of early on design elements and asking you guys, is that something that is valuable to you? Is that something that creates a more refined and more detailed public realm? So you have this breakdown. So it's not just a sea of poured concrete as the drive aisles. And that's actually, Amy, that's the end of this presentation. So yeah, we can open it up to questions. It's great.
So we got another comment in the chat from Jeff Dalton, wondering about the progress on the 11th Street Bikeway project and whether there's an opportunity to include maybe some wayfinding and signage at the 11th and Grove intersection to highlight the linen blocks area as like a destination. And I think I can answer and speak to that. We are coming up on 60% design on the 11th Street Bikeway and Streetscape projects. So CCDC's portion of that runs from State Street south to River, but ACHD has a northern portion that connects north from State Street to Heron, and together will make up the entire 11th Street Bikeway. So yes, those two projects are coordinating. We haven't got into the detail of wayfinding signage yet, but I know there is some plan to have the bikeway signage with the destinations listed on there with like the mile points that you typically see on those signs. And so we can definitely work with ACHD to see about adding linen blocks on Grove Street or Grove Street as a destination and include mile points for that to try and entice people and make it inviting for them to turn off 11th Street onto Grove and provide more business.
Yeah,
visitors.
and I could go into a little detail about just how these intersections work with bikes, because it's a different, right? Because we're joining bikes with pedestrians within that kind of elevated sidewalk zone.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and so you can see here, here's the intersection between 11th, and we're working with the 11th design team to incorporate their elevated bike lanes and separating, and we're actually playing off of each other. So some of their design ideas, we're incorporating some of our design ideas they're incorporating to get really, we want, as well as the Grove Street old Boise blocks as well, because we know that bikes go through these areas a lot faster than pedestrians, and you don't want to navigate 5 different types of bike lanes on your commute to work. So we're really trying to make that a simple process. And so what we have here is in this dark line are our bike lanes. And at the intersections, they have a yield, bikers have a yield sign basically where they would stop back of the sidewalk. Let me clear that. Back of the sidewalk and wait for the light to turn green, and then they would proceed in. You can see those bike lanes and those routes are painted within the concrete, green to emphasize not only to the bicyclists, but also to the pedestrians that this is a crossing path right here. It's a shared space. So it gives good cues of how to negotiate these areas. But let's say that you are driving on 11th and you want to turn and go towards downtown on Grove. We've also curved these medians here to make it easier for bicyclists to do that. So what they do is cross the street and then make that rounded turn and then go and then get onto our bike lane on Grove Street. So we're looking at how to minimize the effort that is required to navigate these intersections for both bicyclists and pedestrians. Any other questions, Amy? See there?
There was one more specific to 11th Street Bikeway direct connection to the Greenbelt. And I could just say that right now we're ending it at River because as you cross River, it goes into the Shoreline District. And that's one of our newer urban renewal districts. And we don't quite have the funding availability in that district yet to do any property acquisition or easements that would be required to make that direct connection to the Greenbelt at this time. But that is the long-term vision for the 11th Street corridor.
And Jeff, the pavement indicator, those are you thinking lights and or just signage in the pavement? And if you would like to, we can open you up to speak to if that might be easier. Do you see him on there?
There we go.
Okay, great.
Hi, no, it's exciting that you're going to connect the 11th Street corridor to Grove because it makes it an arm, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything we can do to let people know that as you're just riding through that, like, hey, you might want to venture right or left, that's going to benefit everybody. And it's going to actually then maybe encourage more corridors throughout the city to where you could actually do a circuit.
Right. And so your pavement indicators, what were you, I'm sorry, can you?
I was thinking it could be a different round. If you're going linearly down a street and all at once you come to a big round or some sort of a physical thing in the pavement that causes you to look back, to look either way, it might be this, hey, let's wander right.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
That would be something we'd have to explore with ACHD since they'd be the ones who would be maintaining the green paint, and not sure what their temperature would be on like specialty wayfinding markings in the paint itself, but it's something we could definitely explore.
Yeah, or there may be other ways too, not only just in the pavement, but other ways to indicate
Like a sign.
that. Yeah. Especially, I could see this for kids, right? And you're just, let's go and do a whole downtown circuit, on a weekend. And so this kind of family riding, and it's a really good way to have safe junior riders within kind of this downtown core, which we're really excited about. Any other questions or comments, suggestions? You like it, you hate it, anything? Just exit out of this, Amy, and get us to.
And again, feel free to use your raise hand button and we will unmute you and let you have the floor.
Let's go forward here.
And a lot of these people on the call today actually have been part of the early visioning process that was led by Agnew Beck and now onto the concept design. So Kim is one of those participants that's been on that stakeholder design advisory committee, and she just mentioned she loves it. It's amazing how it's evolved since the beginning, and I couldn't agree more, Kim. It's come a long way since we first started the visioning process, so it's pretty cool to see. Thanks.
And I have to say, it's been amazing working with all the property owners and the business owners. You guys have been, and the public. So we really appreciate all of your input and continued input. We're not over yet. So we're just kind of in the beginning here. So we're really looking forward to continuing that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of the next steps then, as continuing with you, we are going to refine this design, kind of really get into the nitty gritty. What's the pavement look going to be? What's the planting, things like that. Sorry for that's actually, exciting sirens. And so we will refine the design and present that again to you either via a website with the final design documents or another open house. And so you'll be able to see that. Then it goes into a design review with the city to make sure it's all approved. And then we can start getting into technical drawings and moving into construction documents.
I'm not sure if you did highlight, Christine, but the roadway surface itself is going to be a concrete pavement, and it'll extend all the way down to 9th. We'll be doing 9th through 10th in coordination with ACHD. They had previously some work on those corners there as part of their downtown Boise implementation plan. So we're taking on that scope so it can be included as part of this overall project. So the roadway surface itself will be concrete. Like I said, we're still contemplating what the surface itself and those parking lanes will be based on stormwater needs and mitigation treatments.
Yeah, really the only asphalt that we have right now is within the bike lane, and that's really just to give us a smooth riding surface, so bicyclists aren't having to hit concrete control joints every 10 feet. So yeah, we're really fortunate, and that was a real excitement for the design team to have concrete roadway and get rid of the asphalt. Well, we are going to be sending out a survey to all the participants here, and also having it go live on the CCDC website. It will go live on Thursday. We would love any additional input from you guys. We have pointed questions on that. What are your order of preferences? We are dialing in the budget to see the extent of all of these improvements, and the how many art courts can we have on the site, how many parklets, things like that. And so we'd love to get your input on the extent of that and your priorities. So that will be being sent out to you guys on Thursday, as well as a recording of this. So if you want to watch it again, it was so good, you can watch it over and over in the coming.
Jeff also had a question about the potential for geothermal in the roadway. And I did speak with the city about that, and they didn't have any planned funding available to expand the geothermal lines. We don't currently have any on Grove. It intersects Grove a couple times, like you mentioned there, Jeff, but they didn't have any funding available to support that extension of the geothermal line at this time, which is a bummer.
Any other questions or anything else you guys would like to see? Or
So Jennifer Hensley asked a question about bike parking and how much is planned for the area.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's our next step of kind of analyzing the bike parking within that furnishing zone. So the good thing about this is that we have an actual furnishing zone now that we can have bike parking, and we don't have to put that bike parking in the parking stalls, the parallel parking stalls on the street. So we're going to be looking at that. There will be bike parking on every single block, oriented to also fit in with seating, and so kind of coordinate all of that together. So stay tuned for that. That's our next level of design iteration.
I'll also add that just to the south of Grove Street along 11th in front of the Oliver Russell building, those who are familiar, we're planning to do a bike corral parking corral in one of those parking spots there. So there will be hopefully more opportunities. People can park their bike there and then explore Grove Street more as well.
Great.
Got a kudos for thoughtful bike parking. Scrolling through. comment, we weren't sure what to expect, but this is so great. Love the design and thought. Yeah, we get that a lot. Like people get really nervous of improvements coming to the area, and then we show them what we have planned and hear their feedback and take that into consideration. And through working together with stakeholders and business owners and property owners, we come to a design that most people are pretty excited about. So thanks for that comment, Erica.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the right track here. We're pretty excited about this. This is a really unique neighborhood, and the adjacency to a lot of the open spaces and just the eclectic nature of it. It's going to be really cool. We're really excited. So Amy, we have about 7 more minutes. We could close up shop early, or if anybody has maybe this is the last call.
Last call for questions and comments. And then, like Christine mentioned, I'll be sending out the link to the survey that's open until October 1st. And you can provide some additional feedback that way. My email is always open, or my phone line, so you can feel free to call me anytime. And then also in that email that I send out, I'll send the link to the recording of both of these public open houses, and that should go out tomorrow once we have those uploaded to the website. And I'm not seeing any hands up or any more comments, so I will thank everyone for spending their lunch hour with us, and appreciate you guys taking the time and providing that thoughtful feedback that you did.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you again in end of October, early November.